bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.
All right, welcome to another episode of Behind the Gear, and the boys are back. It's been a while with everything going on, and it's nice to have everyone back in, kind of back to work and stuff. We'll get Kevin Galerno with us and Wade Russell. And we'll start with the young guy here. Wade, how's everything going with you, buddy?
I think about as good as can be in a holding pattern right now. But it's been nice, obviously, it feels more, anytime the rink gets open and you're rolling sessions back to back and there's kids kind of moving around, it feels more normal, which has been nice. So, but yeah, other than that, just waiting for the weather to turn.
Oh, for sure. And over the course of the last kind of year, how many degrees and educational credits have you received? Because Wado's now working on his master's, and now he just got accepted to Teachers College. So Wado's going to be one of the most decorated guys in skill development ever.
Yeah, I was talking to a couple of buddies. We think we might just hop around and just do a bunch of different undergrads like all over the world.
It's not a bad idea.
Career students, yeah.
Totally.
And then at the end we can just start our own university.
We'll just visit you while you're in class.
The way things are going too, though, if you end up doing that, you might get all your debt forgiven anyway. So you just keep packing it on, and then
I've actually been talking to Biden about it. Yeah,
it's a good idea. Yeah. It's a good idea. I think he's on the other side of the border though, so I don't know how much he will. Yeah, I don't.
I thought we were American up here.
No, we're actually Canadian. We're Canadian. And Kevin, how you doing, buddy?
Good.
Yeah,
you're right. This is back.
Yeah, I know.
The ice doesn't count, and the office doesn't count. Now we're back in the booth.
Yeah, we're back in the booth.
This means we're back.
And how's parenting going for you? You're
good.
Getting better every day. Obviously, you're
that was a lot of unexpected time at home with the little guy. So it was good.
Yeah, good. Have you been like amazed on just how like little people like start to
take over your life? Yes.
Well, yeah. But how they like just start to figure things out.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy, right? Picking up like things and trying to grab things and pulling your.
We've talked about this, but like I try not to say it because so many people in my life have obviously gone through, whether it's you or friends or siblings, and you think like, I don't know if you were like this, you think it's like the coolest thing in the world and that no one else has done it, so you need to share it with everyone. 100%. But like everyone's done it.
Yeah.
So you can tell me, buddy.
Yeah. So I just tell Wade.
It is true though. Like every once in a while,
Wade,
as a parent, you just like check yourself. You're like, Wade, like I'm sending these pictures of my kid picking up a Cheerio, or like every single kid in the world's picked up a Cheerio
his
at some point.
thumbs.
Yeah.
Wade, guess what happened today?
He figured out where his big toe is. It's amazing.
And how about you? Did you get through schooling at home?
Yeah, everything's been good. Kids are good. They're back in school, which is nice. And I think overall everything's been pretty good. You know, I think for everybody going through this worldwide, I think it's brutal, and everyone's kind of facing it differently. Whether you've been sick or know someone that's sick or lost somebody or whatever that happens, obviously that's terrible. And then on the business side of it, with businesses failing or not being able to be opened and losing revenue, I think it's been a bit of a challenge for everybody. But it's especially with kids. I think you just gotta not shelter them, but they don't need to know that. They don't need to know that. Daddy's not making any money, or mom lost her job. You know what I mean? I think you just got to kind of battle through it, make it as good for them as you can, especially with younger kids, and make sure that they come out of it as normal as possible, right? So that's kind of what we've been doing, I guess. And I don't know if we succeeded or not. We'll tell you in a couple of years when they come out and they're all messed up, or if they come out and they're doing okay. But overall, it's been not too bad. But what I wanted to chat about today more so than anything was just talking about skill development, talking about guys, girls getting back on the ice, and and depending on where you are in what country and what area, and how your government or how your mayors or whoever made their major policies. I mean, rinks got closed, they got reopened, they got closed, they got reopened. Seasons got canceled. Seasons are maybe going to go again. And I know in our area, we were off the ice for a while. We just got back on a couple weeks ago, and it was weird. I think it was. It wasn't as like, whoa, we got to get crazy. At the beginning, like the first couple days, I remember talking to the rink, like, no, we're not even fully booked yet, but I find over the last week and a half, it's really ramped up where parents, families, and kids are just like, hey, like we got to get games going. We got to play 5-on-5. We got to get body contact going again. And it's a really, really hard situation because I understand the players that are maybe finishing up a junior career or finishing up at school or are in their draft year for maybe the OHL or USHL or in their draft year for the NHL. Like those are some kind of years that are important for some of these kids. There's no doubt. So I think it's, plays a little bit harder of an impact on them. But at the end of the day, I mean, it is what it is. We're all in this. We're all battling through it. But there's been there's been a lot of people, I think, going a little bit crazy that they haven't been able to play, and now trying to get as much ice as they can, as much almost competition, and kind of jamming everything in here as quick as they can. So I don't know what you've noticed, Kevy, and kind of being on the ice and stuff with guys and girls.
Let me ask you this: like I agree with you that it kind of started off like maybe slower than we anticipated, with people just almost being timid a little bit. Maybe that's how it seemed, and then it kind of ramped up. Do you think that has anything to do with at first there wasn't games allowed and now there's games allowed?
Yeah, probably, right? We kind of entered our first week or two is like very like 10 people on the ice, small groups. You couldn't really do anything anyway. So you're right. It probably just, people are just slowly getting back into it. But now that they've eased restrictions a little bit more, so now they're going to potentially allow games.
And when I say games, like, be clear, they're not games that matter. They're 4-on-4 or they're inter squad, or it might be against another team, but they're not games that matter. They're games, don't get me wrong, but like, and that was kind of my point asking, is like everyone was, okay, we'll get on the ice, whatever. And now if you said you could play 10 games Saturday, Sunday this weekend, people would jump at it. Yeah. But if you could do one skill session, maybe. No, I'm not saying everyone should be out there doing skill sessions on the weekend. Just, I think there's like that crazy aura almost around games, like need to play games.
It's hard too, and I don't know what you think, but I mean, these kids really have gone through almost a year of, like, let's call it skill development. You know what I mean? Like, they couldn't do games. They had to do practices. So on their side of it too, I understand it. And even for the parents, like, let's get these kids playing, man. They haven't played a meaningful game in a year, so let's get them going a little bit. But what have you seen? What have you kind of noticed as far as just kind of the vibe?
Well, yeah, like it's interesting because the games are the measuring stick, right? Like if you're trying to track how a player's developing, like if their glide turns are getting better, that's great. But how do they look in a game using those glide turns, or cutting away from players, or applying the stuff that they're learning, right? So I understand the desire to kind of see that stuff. I always thought, obviously the pandemic has not been awesome in any way, but one of the kind of silver linings of all of it has been the outdoor rinks and stuff, and kids really kind of going back to the roots and things that have kind of, I think, not been that way. Obviously weather dependent, right? Depending on where you are. But I think like kids have been playing, they have been playing games, 2-on-2s, 1-on-1s, deking each other out, imagining stuff, living out on the backyard rink and stuff like that. So, and I know it's hard because, again, you want to see it on the scoreboard, right? You want to see when the clock hits 0, what's the score and how did Billy do and all that stuff. But I think play to kids is a lot different than what it is to parents, right? Like play is play. Like how many times when you or I or we were kids and you just come up with a random game, and it made no sense when you look back on it or whatever. But so I do think kids have been playing obviously a little bit differently than traditional, and it's not as refined or whatnot. But yeah, I just think we kind of got lost in the shuffle of what's really important with youth sports and kind of what kids should be enjoying out of it.
I totally agree. I was talking to a father probably last week, and his kid plays AAA, really good player, younger player. So not, like, no big years as far as, oh my God, we're missing out on this year or whatever. And I was mentioning that to him as well. I was saying, like, I put an outdoor rink in our backyard, which was awesome. And I'll do that again. It was not big at all, very small, but it was wicked. I have 2 young kids. They enjoyed it. They played. I didn't force them to go out. They could go whenever they wanted to go. And that was one thing I really made clear. And I may have mentioned this before, but when we did the outdoor rink, it was, you guys don't ever have to use it if you don't want to. Like, I'm doing it more because I want something to putter at and mess around with, and I'll go on it a little bit as well. But if you guys want to go play, you go play. I'm not going to tell you to go play. I'm not going to drag you out there. And it was awesome. It was really good. And his father was saying one thing that he noticed, and he's a very competitive, his kid's very competitive, a good player. He said it was really cool to watch the kids playing. Like, they'd meet up with a couple of guys on his team and go to the outdoor rink, or somebody, a lot of the dads had outdoor rinks and families had outdoor rinks. And it was awesome. We just sit around the dads and talk a little bit and have a beer, and the kids would play. And it was really fun to see, and to your point, Wado, I think sometimes as parents we get more caught up in the, oh my God, we got to play our neighboring town, we got to play that other AAA team. So I heard a couple of kids say, talking about one of the teams is ranked number 1 how are you ranked right now? Like, who's ranking you number 1? And how are you ranked when you haven't even played a game all year? So I think we got to look at the whole big thing again and just, what is play? Like, what are these, especially at young ages? I understand as you get older, it's a little bit different, more competitive. There's more at stake as far as, as much as I hate saying it, but being drafted or, trying to get a scholarship or things like that, there's a little more pressure on these kids, which sucks, but it is part of the game. But for the younger kids, I mean, as long as you kept your kid active, maybe got them into skiing, snowboarding, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, we're in winter here, but rollerblading, baseball, whatever. Like, get them in other things, keep them active, get them moving. I think is huge, and I think a lot of kids did do that. To your point, I think it was a good. Yeah, it was definitely good, and I think a lot more people built things in their yard to use, right? Whether it's a sliding hill or an outdoor rink or something, there was way more stuff going on, I think, in people's yards to keep kids busy, which is kind of cool too. So, as far as ODRs and stuff, do you guys get a chance to go out on any outdoor rinks as far over the pandemic?
Yeah, I was out a little bit, but not a ton. Now my son's not old enough yet. But so
Can't stand up
yeah,
yet,
I couldn't.
so it's
Yeah,
hard.
it was tough sell for me to go on my own, but a little bit. But I did, like, we just went for drives or walks or whatever and saw a ton of it, and it was cool to see.
Yeah.
It was really cool to see, I thought.
Yeah, for sure. Were you, Wado?
Yeah, I only got out to one great little pond. Just went out with my girlfriend's brother. We played out there for a couple hours one day. But I was the same way. Like, it's by far the most I've ever seen kids out in this area since a long, long time. Like, I was rubbernecking all the time, driving around, seeing all these ponds, like seeing all the kids having fun in obscure little areas and kids on just like little ice patches on the side of the road. And obviously when you think about it that way, it does suck because obviously they probably want to be on a sheet of ice, so they're doing whatever they can. But it's that ingenuity and that creativity that I think is so fun, right? Like, when I think back to some of my favorite memories, like I remember my dad used to cut a maze in the lawn. He'd let the grass grow longer and he cut a little maze with dead ends and stuff. But that was the stuff that was fun as a kid, is those little moments where you're just, figuring stuff out. So as far as ice hockey, I think it's been awesome. I'm sure there's like kind of some more friendships that have come out of this, kids at the rink. But I want to go back to your point of the dads hanging out, having beers, watching their kids play. How much do you think that sticks when they get back in the rink here, where they're just enjoying watching their kid?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I think that mentality changes pretty quick, right? And even, that's kind of a little bit my fear, right? Where some of these, I'm trying not labeling, but at the same time, like some of these intense parents, right? Moms, dads, doesn't matter. And now they're a little more laid back because no one's really playing. There's no real pressure of Johnny being better than this guy. But now that the rinks are open up, you see a little bit more of that pressure coming back, where parents are like, okay, I got to sign up for this session. I got to make sure we got to get a private with this guy. I got to get a private with this girl. And now you're seeing a little bit more of that anxiety coming in, I think, with some of the parents. And again, like, I've got young kids just about to start going through it. My boy's going to potentially start playing, travel hockey next year if he decides that that's what he wants to try out for or whatever. So I understand that. I do kind of get it. I think I've been a little bit over the top on the other side of it, really trying to like manage my expectations and manage my anxiety and just being like, I'm not worried about anything. Just let it go. He's 8 years old. My daughter's 7, like whatever. If they want to play, they'll play. If not, it's fine. But I do understand. And I get where the parents are coming from, where it is, they're going to get anxious, and they're going to get, now that we're starting to roll and games are going to be starting to get played and stuff like that, I think it's going to be crazy. It'll get crazy again. And we'll kind of forget those, playing at the park and having beers with our buddies, watching our kids play on the outdoor rink. I think that'll kind of go by the wayside a little bit for sure.
Is that shocking at all? Like, it seems like we're saying, oh, the change, we can see the change. It's only a change because we're going through this. Like, it's just really going back to normal.
Yeah.
Or it's going to
like
just go back to normal.
It was like this pre-pandemic.
Yeah. This, it's seeming like a change, but it's really just normal. Like, and there's no part of me that thought that wasn't going to happen. Like, oh, I really think, and I'm sure there's some parents, like there's some that are like, oh man, maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Like, he just enjoyed his time off. That's the most fun I've ever seen my daughter or son have on the ice in a long time, and there's probably a little bit of that, but I think for the mass, for the group, it's probably just like going to go back to
the way it was. I totally agree. I think that's, and I wonder how many parents or families, I guess, have picked up new things that they've started to do over this time and we'll keep that going, whether that's just playing board games on a Friday night, or I know for us in our house, every Friday we started doing like a movie night. So we'd order in from a local restaurant around where we live, and we'd go pick up food, and we'd come in and we'd watch a movie while we're eating or whatever, right? Which we never really did before. And that was something that stuck all the way through. We still do it now. I look forward to Friday nights. Like, I'm pumped to get home and have a movie night, So it's been great, right? And then, or even going for walks. Like, it was embarrassing, man. We went for a walk in this cool little ponded area, and the kids were playing hockey in the rink. I took my kids out there to play a couple times over the winter, and it was awesome. We'd never been there, man. It was legit 2-minute drive from our house. Beautiful, like ponds, a couple of different ponds, like a bunch of walking trails. And my wife and I looked at each other. This is embarrassing, man. We lived at our house for like 7 years. We've never even been here. So now we've done that every weekend. We've gone, right, once a week, and hopefully we continue that. And that's something that we said we'd like to do. Whether we do it or not, we'll see. But I wonder how many families have picked up things like that. Kind of moving forward. And Wade, have you guys kind of picked up anything with kind of your group? I know you live. You and your girlfriend and her family.
Yeah, we kind of, I wouldn't say on as much of a schedule,
yeah,
but definitely more of an effort to just be like, hey, let's hang out here a little bit, put the phones away, stuff like that. So I know much more into the first kind of wave of a true kind of lockdown where we were really shut down. There it was, Yahtzee, and then we got into Monopoly for a little bit, and stuff like that. Yeah. So we started doing that quite a bit, and then we would have some poker nights with you guys too that I would get into a little bit. So yeah, it was stuff like that I think was fun, and just a little bit more of a sense of community, going out for walks, like trying to actually say hi to the neighbor and or just a random person on the side of the street, like just, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Even though it's like, good, okay, and then we keep walking or whatever, but just like trying to make a bit more of an effort to connect with people and just check in on and getting a bit more of a sense of a community, I think has been, again, it sucks, but it's been kind of another silver lining of everything going on.
Yeah, totally. It's funny, man. When we started, like, especially the first time, I think when everyone, last March when things got kind of locked down, you were like literally locked down for the first little bit. It wasn't a lot of stuff going on, and I noticed so many more people walking around, and you'd see a lot of the same people, right? So yeah, to your point, it was kind of nice to be able to not even get to know people, just like friendly as far as being someone that you see a familiar face or whatever that was, right? What about you guys, Kev? Did you guys pick up anything aside from a child? Did you guys pick up any other routines?
No, nothing crazy for us. Just we're in the get through one day at a time phase. So
you got the work boots on right now, eh? Just bedtime, diapers, crying, screaming.
We didn't get into you kind of just get into a rhythm, but nothing out of the ordinary for us.
How many times a week, or say a day, do you guys talk about poo and pee and bedtime?
That's why it's not like something we're doing. That's just what you do. I think, again, everyone knows this. Like
it's so
anyone that's been
crazy,
through
right?
it right now.
Come home like, hey, did he poo today? Like, did he? Yeah. It's like, what?
And it's so natural and normal, and there's probably people right now just like, oh man, I haven't asked my wife about my kids' poo in so long, but they're thinking back.
No, they're saying thank God I'm through that stage, man. I think everyone like loves the thought of having a baby and all, but maybe it kind of sucks at the beginning. And I'm just being very honest here, but I mean, you have this, a beautiful baby, and it's awesome, it's amazing, but holy man, it's a grind for sure. It's almost a fog though, I think. And then when you get out of it, like after a year, when you get to that year mark to 2 year mark, you're kind of hopefully getting out of diapers a little bit and stuff like that, and then you look back on it, you're like, that wasn't that bad, and then you have another one, you're like, wow, this sucks.
We're keeping our head above water with the one for now.
That's good. One thing that's really been a common theme that I've heard a ton, and just listening to other podcasts and other hockey podcasts and listening to NHL players, to coaches, to everybody who get interviewed about their hockey journey, and I've interviewed a bunch of people on this podcast just about what they've done, how their parents were, all that kind of stuff. And one of the common themes, man, that pops up all the time is just relax. Like, parents, just relax. It's okay, and I've preached about this forever, but like, let's just work on trying to create good kids, like just good people, please, thank you, be respectful, say no to them. No, you're not going to practice today because you told your mom she was an idiot, or you didn't do your homework, or whatever it is, right? Like, it's okay to say no, right? Listen to your kids, things like that. Like, and then everything else, it's going to start to play, as they get older. I'm talking more younger kids, but even those middle-aged kids, you get a 13, 14, 15-year-old who's disrespectful, doesn't care, just plays hockey. And I mean, that probably started at 4, 5, 6 years old, right? So, for those younger parents that have younger kids, like, let's start working on just don't worry about the game. And so what I'm getting at right now is, what are your thoughts on this whole thing of like parents, just like, don't worry so much about playing 6 spring hockey tournaments and being on on a session, and just relax a little bit. Like, Kev, what do you kind of think? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's huge, and we talked about it before, but and we kind of could go back to what we were just talking about. Like, let the kids have fun. First thing, do they want to be on the ice? Do they want to go to a skill session? Do they want to do an extra tournament? If they do, that's okay. But there's definitely a line there. And we keep saying this and keep seeing it, but we're going to go back to what we were just talking about, normal, and kids are going to be, that's exactly where we're going to go for 90% of the kids into that, like, almost just keeping up with the Joneses all the time. I like, that's part of it, especially in some of these AAA cities where you have like a couple close cities here, whether it's, you know, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, or, you know, you get so much, there's so much around, whether it's on social media locally or just knowing kids and families. And I think it's going to go to, it's too much. So hopefully, and we're kind of like keep snowballing around the same idea that like, hopefully this quarantine and this shutdown is going to allow families to get into other things and maybe make parents realize their kids like other things. Like they like hockey, but they also like other things and they should do those other things. Or no, my daughter just was dying to play hockey every day. Well, there's get them on the ice, you know, as soon as they get back and get them into an extra session. But it's a really fine line. And I think it's like a tough topic for even us to talk about because we don't want to offend anyone. But there's definitely some things that we see that are like, hey, your kids, you're taking the fun out of it for your kid.
Yeah, no, totally agree. What about you, Wado, as far as just kind of that, just relax a little bit, kind of take a step back and worry more about the kind of important things, I guess.
Yeah, right. Like I think this what I'm about to say, I think it happens in all industries and there's things like, there's like this drive towards efficiency, right? We've been doing like in society for the last 100 years, just like getting more efficient and how can we kind of do different things. And I think a lot of it comes down obviously from the pro level, a lot of money in that, they want to win. So we emulate a lot of the things that they're doing. Kids are not professionals. They're kids. This is their childhood. So for example, I remember when the Leafs brought out the TV, put it on the side of the rink.
Yeah.
How many coaches do you think we're going to see put that on the side of the rink now?
Yeah.
And there may be select uses for that, and I'm all about the intention behind the idea, but it's just like we almost emulate without even thinking, why are we emulating this stuff? Well, they're doing it, and that must work for kids. Kids are completely different.
And real quick on that, I don't want to lose your train of thought, but having a TV on the side of the rink is a pain in the ass. Like having done it before and being like, because Hockey Canada was big on this, it's a pain in the ass. And you're also like, you're paying $200, $300, $400 an hour for ice. You're going to spend 10 minutes on the board watching a video what you could have done in the locker room on an iPad. Like
I thought we were trying to get rid of the board.
It makes, right. So I think like there is practicality to it, but you got to look at like the NHL, they have like 4 hours of ice. Like they've got, you know, and they're paying for it, don't get me wrong, but they've got unlimited resources and ice. Like, so as a coach, does it make sense to have the kids sit at the bench and watch it? You know, it's got some practicality to it, no doubt, if you're working on power play or different things like that, but there's other ways to do it. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah. But we emulate that kind of stuff. And so going back to other things, like people would always say like, oh, they've missed out on a year of development. Development happens in a lot of different ways. Sure, have they missed out maybe on a little bit of hockey specific development? Absolutely. But how's their social development been? Obviously, probably a little bit changed because of the school stuff. But what they're doing on technology right now is frustrating, as I'm sure it is for a parent or whatever. Like I'm sure they're learning different ways to kind of communicate. They're interacting with technology. Like all these kids, half the time when I'm on a Zoom call doing teaching lessons, the kid's fixing the Zoom call, not the parent.
Yeah.
Right? Like so they're developing different ways, right? Like you can go, any parents listening, Google Search Institute 40 developmental assets, and you'll get a list of assets that sport can kind of develop in children. And you're not going to read wrist shot or long strides or crossovers. It's about giving back to community. It's self-efficacy and confidence. And there's a whole list of them that goes on. And
what's it called again? Say it again.
Search Institute is kind of the institution that kind of researches kids and what sport can do for them when done properly. And then their developmental assets, and they kind of go by age categories. I think it's like 6 to 10, and then 10 to 15, and then I think 15 to 18 or something roughly in those kind of brackets. But for like my own personal story, for example, like summer camps, right? Like that's, even though, they're going to play hockey, like getting comfortable just being in a room of people that you don't really know is huge. And you get a little bit older and you're 13 and you got to take your shirt off, you know, and there's a guy who's a little bit stronger and bigger than you. Like I remember going to junior skates in Milton, I think it was, and I was in a room and I was like, I'm a little noodle. Like I don't want to take my shirt off right now, but like all that stuff down that at the end of the road there, it's happening kind of right now, like not as big of a deal or anything like that, but just kids they're developing in different ways, socially, emotionally, mentally, physically, sport specific or not. So have they missed out on a year of development, maybe specifically to hockey, but they're developing in different ways that can then be conducive to hockey development or whatever it is that they want to go on to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, man. And I think, you know, over this year, I know this was like one of the things, especially like, again, going back to like when we got locked down at the beginning, I know one of the big things, especially like for companies to market and stuff, is, well, what are you going to learn over, like, are you going to learn a new skill and whatever, right? And it's all great in theory. How many people actually did pick up a new skill, and how many people actually focused with their kids on learning something new? And one thing I know is when the kids had online schooling and everything was done on an iPad, like my kids can navigate an iPad pretty well. Like most kids can at like 3-4 years old now. But it was crazy, man. Like they learned how to print off the iPad. They learned how to share documents. They learned how to like upload things to send to their teacher. They were emailing. And this is grade 1 and grade 3. So that's young. I think about, for me anyway.
I still hope you guys.
We still had stone and like chisels, man. Like
Bluetooth?
Yeah, right. So it's crazy, you know. So I think like the stuff they're doing, and I'm happy for them. Like this is awesome. They can do this stuff because, man, we didn't learn this stuff till university, really, when the internet and all this stuff was kind of coming in and being really relevant, right? So I think it's just the way it's going to be, you know. And even, you know, we grew up with no cell phones, and we, you know, had phones on the wall and old school phones, and that's what we did. We memorized phone numbers. I knew all my buddies' phone numbers. Asked me to name me 5 phone numbers right now, I could not. Whereas our kids, everything's going to be dependent on an iPad, an iPhone, or a phone, or whatever that is, right? A device. And that's just the way it is. We can fight as much as we want, but man, we may as well encourage it a little bit. Now, I'm not saying keep your kids on an iPad or a device for 8 hours a day, but it's going to be part of their learning. It's going to be part of how they communicate, like you said. And yeah,
part of how they do business,
everything.
Part of how they go to school,
Totally,
university, like part of everything.
Yeah.
You'd be, that's one of those, like, don't buck the system. Like to me, like like you said, there's too much, but why fight it? Like they're going to need it.
And I think too with that, like, so with the device piece, that's great. But then you have some kids that become antisocial because that's all they're doing. So you can't really have a conversation with them. They don't really keep their eyes up. They're not going to look at you. They don't give you a firm handshake, all that kind of stuff. Right. And I think having a combination of both, having a bit of savvy or a bit of understanding on how to use devices and how to be savvy on that as a young person, and then also being able to have a conversation and maybe have dinner with your family and have a conversation. Hey, how was your day? Hey, you know, and just I think those are huge too. And having those personal skills, I think is.
But you brought it up earlier about
right?
like the onus on the parents a little bit, like, you know,
For
what I mean?
sure.
Whether it's just please and thank yous or it's like managing your time on the computer.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we're on the ice a bunch, but in the middle of the day, we spend a bunch of time on the computer. I'm not like, if there's stuff to do at night, you do it, but like, I'm not dying to go home and get on the computer or even staying on my phone. You tell me what you think, because my son's not old enough, but like, I'm sure you don't want your son or daughter seeing you on your phone or computer all night long. Like if there's stuff to do, you got to do it, but like, you're probably not on it all night if they're outside playing or if it's nice or whatever, you guys are doing something, you're probably engaged, and it's no different for them. There's a time and a place to do that stuff when they're doing their online schooling, and then there's a time and a place to do other stuff. Totally. And that's on the parents.
No, I agree. And I'm not perfect at it. Like but yeah, there's definitely a lot of times where I just put the phone away and go and play. But then there's also times where I'm on my phone, maybe they're asking me a question and they'll check me on it. Like, Dad, like you're always on your phone, or Dad, why I'm trying to talk to you and you're on your phone. I'm like, I want to swat them, but I'm like, you're 100% correct. Like, yeah, I gotta, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're trying to talk to me. And so I totally agree. And I think, you know, as parents, we always battle with that. But we've all been around parents that are on their phone all the time and are, you know what I mean? And we've been around parents that they don't even know where their cell phone is, you know? So there's, you know, you got to have a balance there for sure. But I think it is important to take that time with your kids and put the devices away and show them, kind of leading by example a little bit too, right? When we're eating dinner, no, we're not checking our phone. You know what I mean? When company's over, then that's one thing that burns me if they've got their iPad time or their device time, let's say at whatever time it is, let's say 1 till 2 in the afternoon and friends come over. You know, well, no, you're putting those away. Like people are here, man. We have actual people here. Like let's talk to them, you know? So, but trying to instill some of that stuff in them at young ages, I think is huge, right?
Some of it's just natural. Like you can't help it. Like, and I promise this will be the last time I bring this up, but like, I don't know if you guys heard, I have a son. So he's 7-8 months.
He's already on a device.
If there's a remote or a phone on the couch and 7 of his favorite like little chew toys, he is reaching for the phone or the remote to put it in his mouth 100% of the time, like 100%. Yeah, and it baffles, like it's almost a bit of a game now. Like, you know, my wife and I'll be sitting there and be like, watch, we'll put down 5 things and one of them will be the remote, and he's going after it. Yeah. He's crawling past all the toys to get to that. I don't know how it happened. Like, we're not nuts on our phones or anything, but I don't know how it happened, but it happened. And maybe that's our first mess up. I don't know, but I don't know if you remember that.
He might be a baby genius. Yeah. He's just trying to check out Netflix or something.
You can get him to flip the channels on Sunday. But the one thing too that gave me, again, I don't have kids, right? Like I always,
you are a kid.
I'm still in diapers, but I always have that caveat that I really don't know what it is. I try to like flip this sense. Like I'm worried about my parents obviously right now with everything going on, right? So I try to like flip that worry into maybe how parents feel about their children. But the one thing that really kind of gave me an interesting perspective about everything going on was that London Free Press article where they looked at kind of pandemics in the past and how people react and all the different themes that are still going on to this day. And the one that I thought was the most interesting was the kids that had to stay home back then. Then they learned from the radio. They had educational content playing across the radio waves all day, and the kids would go home with these little booklets, and it all kind of aligned within their little district, and that's how they did their learning. And so to me, it just was like, again, this is a non-ideal situation. I'm not advocating for kids learning through iPads. I think being in person is more of the ideal. That's how society works. That's the way the kids should learn. But it's just like kids have been through this before, and they're resilient little buggers. But to your point, I do think technology boundaries and things like that are important. Like I think maybe the people that are struggling with keeping their kids on the iPad are the kids that are on their iPad all the time, and it's just like overload technology. But if they only get an hour a night and they kind of enjoy it and they kind of look at it as a bit of an outlet, then I think you can build healthy boundaries with technology in kids' lives for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that is huge. And
again, I don't have a kid, so
it is interesting though when you see like them doing online learning or learning through a radio and a booklet is basically similar to what we did, but now fast forward the technology, right? Mm-hmm. And they adapted and figured it out. And someone said, hey, why don't we just announce stuff on the radio? You get a great idea. And the kids had an opportunity to still learn from home. I think the other thing too that's really important for parents is as we kind of help our kids navigate through this, and they are resilient kids, but we take away some of that resiliency when we open up every boundary and we tackle every obstacle for them, and we talk to every teacher and every coach for them. Like I think that's where we like make our kids not resilient, and now they become little mushy puddles that can't deal with anything and are breaking down because they're not getting ice time, or they gotta fail the test, or somebody says something to them. We were talking about this with another family the other day about bullying, and I think I've been a bully, and I think I've been bullied. I think everybody pretty much has been bullied and bullied people. You know what I mean? Or has been on both sides of that, whether it's from a buddy making fun of your hair or it's from some guy or girl at school that told you that whatever, your clothes suck. You know what I mean? Like we've all gone through some, but how do you deal with it? Number one. And then how do you continually, face it? And can you rebut it? Can you walk away from it? What are some of these strategies that we're helping these kids? And I'm maybe a bit old school. Like my first thing is always with my kids is like, you gotta like, tell authority, obviously, like go through the right path. But I'm very much like, bully's going to bully you 2 or 3 times. Like you're going to have to go back at him. Like you're going to have something in your mind where you can verbally go back at him. If he's being physical or she's being physical with you, and let's say they hit you 2 or 3 times, you say, no, don't do that. Don't do that. You're going to have to pop them. Now my wife loses it when I do this because she's like, what are you talking about? But I just feel that they need to taste their own medicine at times. And I know this is so not the right thing to do, but and I'm not saying guy pushes you, push him back, or girl hits you, you knock her out. Like that's not what I mean. But you've got to help your I think our youth to like have a backbone, man. Stand up for yourself, And you can be like, no, leave me alone, walk away from it, go tell. But when that happens, do bullies really just back down and never bug you again because you walked away and you said, leave me alone, I'm gonna go tell the teacher? Or is that bully gonna be like, you went and told the teacher on me? I got suspended. I got suspended for a day, or I got a timeout in class because you went and told the teacher. Oh, really? Okay, all right. Like, hopefully, you don't see that bully at the movie theater when the teacher's not around. You know what I mean? So, like, I think, these are maybe like big circumstances, but I think we need to teach our kids like how to befriend a bully, how to figure out why that bully is a bully. You know what I mean? And kind of go down a little bit more of that path instead of just kind of hiding from it all the time, or So I don't know. And I guess have you had instances with bullies even that you can remember in the past, or kind of?
I think what you said. Everyone has. I think back to being whether it was I was getting picked on and I found a way to take the pressure off me by pointing it somewhere else. You know what I mean? And look back now and I'm like, man, I can see those times when I got everyone to laugh somewhere else and away from me or whatever. Remember it, fingers being pointed at me. I remember them. I don't think there's any way around it. I know that bullying is such a, hot button word nowadays. It's just tough to say. Everybody can say the word and your hair stands up now. But yeah, I definitely remember times, and I've thought about like how I'm going to handle it in the future. And I'm sure, I don't know if you've gone through it with your kids or whatever, but it's tough. Cause like you said, you can't just, I mean, the days of like, hey, if someone does this to you, you know, like our parents did, you hit them right away.
Yeah.
Make sure you hit them first and hit them hard and they won't bother you again. Not that that's wrong. Probably right, but you can't go around doing that. Can't go around doing that. So yeah, I've had lots of times like that. I mean, even now it happens. Like as adults, it happens like with social media and how you see it with parents and their kids. And like it's never going away. So how do you deal with it?
Yeah. What about you, Wado? Any kind of instances that kind of happened over the years?
I think one thing that kind of, and this is just my personal opinion, I think a lot of the times we've romanticized bullying in the sense that like we picture, you know, kids getting stuffed in lockers or being flipped upside down for change falling in their pockets or pushing a penny down the bus, right?
Yeah.
Like it's way more subtle than that. It's personal, right? It's usually for the most part verbal. And I'm sure there are still physical altercations and stuff like that, especially at younger ages, I think. But kids want to be accepted, like that social order, that's being socialized. Like you want to be accepted by your peers. That's what every single kid craves. I know myself. I remember my mom one time telling me like, you're a sheep, like for just trying to fit in all the time. And it hit me hard. Like I was like, whoa,
that's a tough one. Nice word, Mom. I like that. I'm writing that down.
Love you, Mom.
Yeah.
And I can think of like, there was probably a time period where I lost myself a little bit and probably, you know, I wouldn't say, you know, bullying, but I probably wasn't always as nice as I am now today, or I was even before that time period. But it was, I was just trying to fit in. And I always felt like, especially in hockey, I was never that great. And I wanted to fit in with the hockey guys, and I wanted to fit in the hockey guys. I ended up trying to, you know, follow along and ended up doing some dumb stuff, like nothing too bad or anything. Yeah. Like learned a lot of lessons through it. But I think kids just want to be accepted. So if if you're having trouble and your kid's maybe is the one bullied, he's the one getting pulled in the office, like talk to him about, you know, maybe his approach and get him to invite kids into the games and inclusion and things like that. And then on the other side of that, you know, pump up what is great about your kid. If they are getting picked on about certain things, you know, make them feel good about the things that maybe they are, you know, now seeing as weaknesses. Again, it's tough because I want to get into teaching because this is stuff that I'm very interested in kind of snuffing out and trying to help kids through and whatnot. But I think a lot of the root of it starts with just, you know, wanting to be accepted by your peers. And part of that acceptance also, you know, you want to kind of climb the rung of the social ladder. And even at young ages, kids are smart in the sense that they know that if they get a chuckle, they bump up a point or two. And I'm not saying they got like a bookie and they're keeping track of all this, but it's just like the way you interact, right? And then next thing you know, one other kid starts to hang out with you at lunch, and then, oh, that feels pretty good. And then they keep feeding off it, right? So I think just kind of, it's a lot more subtle, I think, in a lot of cases, especially the ones that you hear about that have been going on for a long time. And you're like, oh, I had no idea. Like, because he's not just holding the kid up by his collar and stuffing him in the face, right? Like it'd almost be easier that way, because then you just get it done, get it over with, split the kids up. But a lot of the times it's personal, it's verbal. And so I think just, you know, making kids feel like everybody's unique, and that uniqueness is what makes you, and that's what you should have pride in. But I think getting that understanding across to parents and being able to see it from that perspective, I think helps a little bit. Yeah. But it's a tricky subject for sure, either way.
No, and you talked about like just kind of the ups and downs of you being an adolescent, and, you know, I think everyone's gone through it. I think any parent listening right now can think back on when we were 12, 13, 14, 15, you know, 16, and the ups and downs we had, right?
And the hormones kick in, and you're competing for,
man,
I'm going after a girl. Like it's just, and it all just collides, man. And then you're trying to do well in school, and then you're trying to do this, and then maybe something's going on at home. Like it boils, and you don't even know what's going on inside you. Yeah. And then you look back and you're just like, whoa, like I get it now. But when you're in the heat of it as the kid, like kids just don't get it. They just don't have that top down perspective yet. They don't see how, you know, that argument between mom and dad at the kitchen table last night, and you show up at school the next day and you got a little more fire in your belly, and then, you know, your buddy just ribs you at the calf table, and then next thing you know, you fire back with something personal, and you don't even notice it in that moment, and then you look back a couple years later and you're like, whoa. I'm not saying that was me, but you know what I mean? Like it's just, you look back and you're like, oh, I get it now. Like I see how all those things were kind of pulling me in different directions and making me act different ways, sometimes great, sometimes not so great. But it's a big pipicture thing, I think, for sure.
Yeah, and I think as parents, I think we need to realize that, you know, it's not easy. Like growing up is not easy. Like high school, like I think I was talking this with my wife, but high school sucked. Like high school was awesome. I had a really good high school experience. It was really fun. But you think of like how cliquey high school was, how you had like your athletes, your jocks, your nerds, your science, your mechanics. Like it was all cliquey. It was just, and I went to small high school when I was in Sudbury, and then I went to a huge high school when I was down in Markham, close to Toronto, and very different experiences with both. But I had a lot of fun. I was fortunate I could fit in, and it was fine. But like, kind of sucks when you look at the big picture of high school as far as just how. So now you think of our kids navigating through that, right? And now you got social media, and like you said, bullying is not going to be someone taking your hat and bringing it to the bathroom, taking a dump in it, and putting it in your locker. It's going to be somebody saying something stupid about your shirt online. Simple, not even hard. And then that hits home. And then maybe 4 or 5 other comments go on that or whatever it is. And it's little subtleties like that start to, and as parents, you can't monitor every single thing your kid's on as far as every social app or all, so the lines of communication are huge. Having that conversation, understanding it's not easy what they're going through, and having a little bit of empathy for that, because it's very easy for parents. I do it all the time. Suck it up. Like, yeah, I know you're sore, but I'm sore every day. Suck it up. But you don't, and sometimes I don't take the time to like talk and say, what is really wrong? Like, is there anything going on at school? Like, is the bus ride okay? Like, asking these questions and trying to get some dialogue going with your kids. And because man, yeah, it's even at young ages, life's not easy for them either. As much as we think it's a joke because they don't have a job and a mortgage, it's still not that easy, right? There's still a lot of other things that come into play with young kids too. So,
but there's a part of it, and I do not mean, this is a disclaimer, that I want kids to get bullied. So I'm not, if it comes across like that's wrong, but it's a part of that resiliency that's taught that I think a lot of kids are missing right now. And I'm not saying they need to learn it through getting bullied. There's other ways to learn it, but their kids are pretty soft and continuing to head that direction as a whole, in my opinion. And there's part of that that's like, in the old days, there was no like therapy for kids that were struggling. Now, there was also no online bullying like there is now, but kids learned how to be resilient because they had no other choice.
You're on your own. Like, you couldn't run away and call somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
You need to stand up, and you got to get your hands up, and you're standing in there.
Yeah, you dealt with it. And then you got home, and for the most part, it wasn't as common knowledge for parents to know what this was doing to kids' long-term development and their confidence and all that stuff. So it was like, what was your parents going to say to you if you had a problem at school? They're probably like, toughen up.
Yeah, like it'd be a conversation, and I think they would help me navigate it, but it would be me to go talk to a teacher.
And I'm not saying if it was bad, if it was something real bad,
for sure,
something small,
for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is no different than a kid that doesn't get ice time.
Yeah.
And he comes home and he's mad. Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Parents are writing an email, going online, you know what I mean? Or they're lipping off in the stands next game, whatever, instead of being like, hey, what happened? Like, whatever, you ask your son or daughter, why didn't you play? Like, why didn't you think it didn't play? Well, let's go together, or you on your own, you can talk to the coach. Like, I'll bring you, whatever. And you got to ask, like, and they're different. I'm not saying not getting on the power play is the same as getting bullied at school, but there's a sense of just resiliency in kids working things out on their own that I think is really important and isn't happening as much as it should.
Totally.
And that's not meaning I want kids to get bullied.
Yeah.
So,
2 quick stories. So with my daughter, she's got a little more like spunk to her and stuff at times. And we got a report card, like the one report card at the start of the year was okay. It was good, and then the second one came in and it kind of dropped in a couple of areas and stuff. And we're talking like grade 1. It's not going to be the end of the world. But so we were talking to her about it and saying, well, how come these are dropping? Like, and it's like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, and one of the big things with her is like, not focused. And this year's a little bit weird for her because she's social. Normally she gets stuff pretty good, and normally she'd be able to help other kids out and go to someone else's desk and help them work a little bit and then do her work and whatever. And you guys know as well as I do, when you're just sitting at your own desk all the time and you're done your work, you get bored, you get into trouble, right? So there's a lot of things like that, like focus and things and stuff. So we had a good chat with her and talked to her about it, whatever. And then we said, well, if you want to get better grades, you should talk to your teacher about it and ask her, like, how do I get better grades and stuff? And didn't think much of it. Well, then a couple days later, we get a note in the book, in her like book coming home, that Holly asked today how she could get better at school, like like very nice, keep working hard, whatever. And I was like, my wife and I looked at each other like, oh man, like one of those moments where like she actually listened to us, like she actually, and she just went on her own and did it. We didn't tell her to do it. It was really good. Like, I was like, wow, this is great. So that was, obviously we're very like complimentary on her, like, man, good job. This is awesome. Great. We're so proud of you for doing this. And it was all good. Now last week, so this is fast forward like a month, we got another note in her book saying, I don't know, what's wrong with Holly, but today she came in, she was very snarky and a little bit like, basically disrespectful and like, hard to manage today. So I pull her aside, like a month ago, this happens that month, but to your point, Wade, it could have been, maybe she just had a bad day. Maybe we were getting into it in the morning because she was late getting to the bus or whatever it was. Right. So I was going to write a note back saying, hey, you know what? Thank you for the note. Really sorry. We talked to Holly. Like, I'm like, no, screw this. I'm like, Holly, you're writing a note back to your teacher on this. So Holly sat down, we helped her, and then she wrote a note back to the teacher. Like, I'm really sorry. I'm going to work harder on this. And I'm like, what do you want to say? Because it's easy for me to dictate what she's going to say. But I'm like, what do you want to say? What should you say here? And she verbalized what she wanted to say or what she thought she should say. I'm like, that's great. Let's write it. So she wrote it all out and sent it in. And the teacher commented to her saying, oh, that's great. We'll work together. And kind of was all good. But it was like, you're the one messing this stuff up. Like you gotta talk. You gotta answer the bell on these because.
So you never talked to. You didn't send a message after, email, call, nothing.
Not any of it. Yeah, it was all through Holly. Now she's in grade 1. It wasn't anything that's like crazy or and I'm not. Don't ever tell Holly this, but I don't care how she does on her grade 1 report card. Yeah. Like she's a good kid. She's doing fine. Yeah. But I want her to be respectful. I want her to be acting the right way. And that wasn't her. That's not really how she is, but she had a bad day. Okay, fine. Teacher made a comment on it. Well, then you deal with it. Like you got to say sorry about that. You can't just wheel through life doing that. You know what I mean? So I think, and again, I'm not saying we're perfect by any means, but it was like, you got to step up on this. I know you're only in grade 1, you're 7 years old, but you know better than this and you've got to correct this, And if it escalates and she continues being like that, then it's okay. I will go meet the teacher. What's going on? Like there's got to be something that we can work together on to help Holly out. But so yeah, I think it's just like a combination of things. And you have these great moments with your kids and you have these terrible moments with your kids. And you're like, is this even the same kid? Like, are we doing a good enough job? Are we messing these kids up? Like they have too much screen time? Are they eating too much sugar? Like all these things go through your head of like, basically it's a mess. So good luck, Kevy.
Yeah.
Enjoy that.
Yeah, and that kind of brought up too a little bit like that idea of just approaching somebody, who has come down a little bit heavy-handed on you about whether they cut you from the team, whether they just said they benched you, whether it's you got a bad mark at school or whatever it might be. Like we just sat down with a kid that we've been working with, and he did awesome. Like he handled it really well. It was super mature of him just to sit down and want to know.
He asked.
Yeah, he's trying to make a team, but he did a great job coming to us. But you could even tell like voice is cracking a little bit, like a little nervous. Like it's tough to be, and that's what I said to him. I'm like, what you're doing right now is hard. It's hard to go to people that are older than you and maybe in not a position of power, but like they were your coach or whatever you want to call it, and ask questions like, what do I got to do to be better? And hear not negative feedback, but critical. What do they call it? I'm not thinking
like
the
constructive
right word.
criticism.
There you go. Yes,
like
thank you. Yeah. Like to hear something where it's like, hey, like I think you can do this, but right now you're not, right? Like so, and I thought he did a great job, but it makes me think back to I had an Adam team, and I'll tell another story about them later when we talk about some other stuff, but. We used to have, I don't know what the cadence was. I don't know if it was a little too extreme where it was like once a month, but I know our coach and Adam would pull us into the room and just do like a little goal setting thing with us. And it wasn't it was probably intimidating at that age, but when I look back on it, it wasn't like extreme, like in the sense, like I want to play in the NHL or anything like this, but it was just like, hey, how do you think you're doing? How are you having fun? And I actually, through school, I had a project with a guy he runs a boarding school with 20 girls. And so what he does is what he calls a climate survey. And it's like once a month, he just sends us 3-question little survey. How are you feeling? What have you liked so far? Do you have any problems with one of the other girls? Like and it changes every time, but it's just like gauging things. And going back to how you handled that stuff with your daughter, like I think asking questions is a really good way to get them to move forward with their own development. So there's a thing called like the GROW model of questioning. It's usually meant for goal setting to help people kind of come to their realization of their own goals. But I think just questioning in general, like just, what do you think you should do? What do you think you should say? Like, what do you think is a good apology? Because in 2 ways, they really ponder and hear, and that's when the learning happenings and the pathways and things like that. But then also it just puts the ownership on them. Like, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to help you. I'm going to kind of give you the leading questions, but I'm not writing that letter, or I'm not coming up with the final thought, or whatever it might be. So yeah, a lot of stuff in there, but
no, I think it's good. And I think, again, supporting the parents here, I think sometimes it's frustrating, man, trying to get a 7-year-old to come up with an answer. Seriously, it's easier. Just tell her that you screwed up, you'll be better. I'll write it for you. You know what I mean? Like, it's easier to do that. Way easier. It's like getting your kids to make their bed in the morning. It's way easier for me to just go throw the sheets on. I can do it in a minute instead of battling with them for 17 minutes trying to get them to pull a sheet over. You know what I mean? But, man, once they get it down and then that's the routine, then they can make their bed the rest of their life or whatever that is, right? So I think to defend the parents a little bit, sometimes it's just easier to just
100%. And I do it as a coach too. I ask a question to a kid on the ice and he doesn't answer anything wrong. And then I go on, right? Like, I don't have enough time. So I totally get it. It's not always that easy.
No, but I think, man, that's part of being a parent though. You got to take time. It's going to take you maybe
it's a job
minutes to get them dressed, but they're getting dressed on their own. And when you could do it in a minute, so I think, it's a job for sure. And I think that's huge, man. Definitely. We'll shift gears back to hockey here, but
which was your original question 45 minutes ago.
Yeah, totally. Should we ease off? No, but you had brought up a good story earlier, Wade, about like Barzal and just like our kids, our kids doing too much, our kids allowed to be kids a little bit. But if you want to share the story, kind of you were talking to us a little bit before.
Yeah, I believe it was done maybe on Sportsnet. Like there's a piece out there somewhere. If you Google it, it was Barzal's dad talking about an instance when Barzal was Matt Barzal, right? Is the kid's name. He,
pretty good
I think,
hockey.
13 to 16, somewhere in there, like young age, but starting to get to the age where you're getting more competitive. And I'm sure the quality of player he was probably really working and really committed. But one day he came home and he said to his dad, he's like, I want to go to the skate park or something like that. And his dad talked about his internal thoughts about how he originally wanted to kind of snap it and be like, no, like you got to go to this thing. And he kind of weighed.
Because he had an ice session or something, right?
Yeah.
He
had a commitment that he made, right? And he kind of weighed the value of like, here's my boy kind of coming to me. He's been great. He's been working really hard. He's been doing everything that we've kind of asked of him or he's demanded of himself. And he wanted to go hang out with his friends that day. And Matt, I believe in the clip as well, credits his dad for allowing him to do that. Because he said, not that was a make or break day, but just you do that so many times and no, you're going to hockey. No, you're going to hockey. Kid's going to burn out. And Matt credited his dad a lot for that kind of approach and how it just allowed him to enjoy life and childhood while still obviously, developing into a heck of a hockey player, but just, that autonomy, right? Like having that choice there is huge for kids. Like,
totally.
And it's a fine line because you need to constrain them and guide them and everything. But yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool story.
No, it's really cool, man. And even like to relate that back to like even personally, we just had an incident, like an instance this week where we had ice time that my son could have came to and it wasn't signed up for it. So my big thing, I've said this I think before, is if we're signed up for a team or you're signed up and you say, hey, we got 6 basketball sessions. Do you want to do this? And like, yeah, I want to do it. Okay. And basketball session number 4, you're like, I don't want to go. No, it doesn't matter. You're going. You told me you wanted to go. We signed you up for it. You're going. I don't care if you cry and scream the whole time, but you are going. But if it's a random, like,
no,
hey, there's
you asked them though. That's the thing. You asked them if they wanted to go.
Totally,
to 6
like that's what.
sessions.
And they're young, so that's one of the things you got. If you say yes, no problem, we'll do it, but you got to commit to it. So long story short, this is just an extra ice session. I'm like, hey, do you want to go to it the night before? He's like, yeah, I want to go. I'm like, okay, cool. The next morning, get up. I'm like, hey, buddy, it's I'm going to leave here in like 15. Do you want to? Are you coming? He's like, no, I don't really want to go. I'm like, okay, well, why not? Kind of had a little conversation with him. Well, pause here for a sec. In my internal part of being a dad, a competitive dad, I'm like you got ice. You don't want to go out. Like, you don't want to get better. In my head, I'm having this dialogue in myself, right? And I'm asking these questions like, why do you want to go? I just don't want to go. I'm like, dude, like, I've told the coaches that you're probably going to be coming. Like, you should be. I don't know. I just don't want to go. Like, okay, so I leave the house kind of hot. Not to him, I didn't yell or anything like that, but I was like kind of hot, and I probably said something like something along the lines of maybe, I don't know, don't quote me on this, but like, if you're not going to practice, then you're going to end up playing house league, and that's totally fine. But if you're not going to practice, like, just like I'm talking to a 16-year-old here, I'm just like throw a little jab in there, right? Because So anyways, so I it's all good. I'm like, all right, I love you guys. I'll see you later. I'm heading out. So I leave, and I text my wife later on. I'm like, hey, how's the morning going? How are the kids? And she's like, oh, they've been great. They've been playing together all morning downstairs. And that's all I wanted to do, was just play, But again, like internally, I get it. As a dad or a mom, you want your kid to get better. You got an opportunity to bring him on the ice and put him in front of some good coaches. And, so I had that exact same internal dialogue probably that Barzal's dad had to some extent, where I'm like, dude, seriously.
Or if you've paid for the session, like, sure, yeah, right? I get it, 100%.
So it's not an easy decision to make, but at the same time, I'm like, I didn't sign you up for this. I'm just throwing an extra one out there if you want to go. If you don't want to go, no problem. And, we chose not to, and okay, like I got to deal with it and go from there, right? And yeah, so I think it is not as easy as just, hey, everyone just relax, because we're all, everyone wants to see their kids do well, and everyone wants to see their kids, succeed, and whatever that is. So it's hard to like listen to a 7-year-old or 8-year-old saying, no, I don't want to go. Like, okay, no problem, bud. Like, oh, I want ice cream. Yeah, sure, you can have ice cream. Like, you want to listen to some extent, but at the same time, you're like, man, when do you kind of, navigate that water, and then you're the one that's saying, no, I'm going to drive the boat here now because this is what we need to do, and that's always a tough one, I think, for parents, and I have that kind of internal piece to it, When we talk about intensity though, and you guys, see this a lot, I see it a lot on the ice. So I bring my kid to a session, let's just say, and I follow my kid around the ice. And so what I mean by that, for any parents not sure what I'm talking about, and any parent's been on a rink knows exactly what I'm talking about. But if you're at a practice and you're running, let's say 4 stations in the 4 corners of the rink, and my son's in station A, and I'm standing in corner A, and I'm watching my son or my daughter, and then my son moves to station B, and I walk from station A to station B in the stands and around the rink to watch them in there. And then they go to station C, and I walk to station C. Like, any advice for those parents? Because I cannot stand that. You can see the entire rink from station Z. So just stand at station Z, be a fly on the wall, watch your kid. But any advice for that? I'll start with, go ahead, wait.
I mean, I could go all day on this one, but the way I compare it to is, imagine a classroom, and mom's nose or dad's nose is pressed right up on that little piece of glass on the doorway, just staring at Jimmy or Susan or whoever in the back of the classroom. And then they go to art class, and then guess what? Right back on it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm so thankful of now, and again, technology wasn't around, so maybe that would have changed, or at least not as integrated into our lives as it was back then. But my dad really made an effort to come to everything. It was just his thing. He's like, I want to experience this with you. So I can think back to every single time he was watching me constantly, but never, no motioning, no coaching, no nothing. He was usually tucked up in a little crow's nest corner. Games, he'd be down in the corner in the offensive zone or whatever, but never signaling anything, never anything, just watching intently, like just watching me skate around the rink. I remember being on the Ice Dogs with you one time, Kevin, and I said, look at how many parents are just staring into their phones right now, and their little kid just fell and got up for the first time, or learned how to do a little bit of a C cut or whatever it is that we're working on, shooting a puck, raising the puck, or dangling or whatever, and they're just into these things, and I'm just like, I am so grateful that I look back and that he just watched me.
He's engaged,
and we just lived it together, and we had fun with it, and it, and I think it's such a shame, and some parents are filming like the whole practice now. You're not even watching your kid; you're watching a video of your kid, like you're living on a whole other side of a screen.
Yeah,
and I don't get it, but
yeah,
I could go all day about that one.
No, I think parents got to check themselves, man. Yeah. Why are you walking around the rink following your kid? Let him
pacing.
You brought him here to be with coaches. If you trust the coaches, let them do their job.
I see parents pace out of the corner of my eye the moment a kid gets a drill wrong.
Right.
Every NHL player in the history of the NHL has done things more wrong than they've done them right. Because the wrong is the bottom of the iceberg. That's what makes the tip of the iceberg, right? Like, you need to fail over and over and over again to make it better. Michael Jordan's shooting percentage is less than 50%.
Yeah.
Right? Like, again, I know that's like one of those big ones that people always use, but it's just like, that's the perspective you need to have. They're going to fail over and I see parents pacing back and forth, throwing their hands up, rolling their eyes back. He can do this. He can do this. Maybe today he can't.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. But again, and also my face is getting red. So
on the like the skill side of it, as far as the skill coaches, if you're bringing him out to a program and he's doing stuff wrong all the time, you have to correct him from the glass, get your money back and don't go to that program ever again.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we don't get it every time, but if 100%. A kid does a drill wrong 6 times in a row, I will guarantee you our coaches will correct them once or twice over that 6 times. Like, so if you got an issue with it, then if you can't sit and watch your kid and enjoy him making a mistake, and I'm not saying that's fun, but you know what I mean? Like, and we're not awesome every day. Sometimes they're going to mess up just like we mess up at work. So, just deal with it.
And variability is good. Yeah. Hockey is random. Right? Yeah. Like, and we use cones because it keeps the kids organized with their movement patterns, and it generally puts them into the type of things that we're looking for. But like, if the kid turns right around the cone once and he's supposed to go left, he's going to turn right in a hockey game. Right. And, or if he jam turns, like, no 2 one-timers are the same, right? Or no 2 shots are really the same in a game. Like, it's random. So it's okay if they're, if that's them being creative, right? Yeah. Like, part of going through drills and kind of motor learning and things is like coming up with solutions to problems. So they're called affordances. It's big, boring science stuff. I'm really struggling in school right now. But my understanding of it is, like, think of a playground. A playground is made up of all these different affordances that kids need to figure out how they're going to navigate that playground. Now, unfortunately, playgrounds have been completely neutered over time, so kids aren't getting that from this kind of setting. But I had like the huge spiderweb dome, and then I had 2 monkey bars that I could hang upside down from, and then I had a pole that I could slide. And I had to figure out how to do these things. You go down the pole and you pinch your skin and it hurts. Then the next, like, you're figuring things out. That's all kids are doing when they're on the ice, is figuring things out. Yeah. And it's okay if they make mistakes, because that's going to give them information that they'll use on the next rep and the next rep and the next rep to continue to figure it out.
But they're not, and I think in a lot of cases, those parents that are following them around, those kids don't think it's okay. Because what are they doing as soon as they make a mistake? Where are they looking? Not at the coach to say what happened. Where are they looking as soon as they make a mistake? They're looking at the glass.
Yeah.
They're looking up top, you know, even if the parent's not following around, like they're looking up top and looking at mom and dad. And we've all said it before, like, hey, look here, buddy. But it's not their fault. It's ingrained in them to look there. You know, they're not looking there because they don't like me or you. They're looking there because
You're want the final say.
They want feedback. They want that. They want to see if mom and dad's arms up in the air, if they're pacing, if they're happy, you know, if they're getting, you know, acceptance from what they're doing. Like, and that's tough, man. Watching those kids do that, it's almost breaks your heart a little bit. Like, you're like
100%.
Oh,
and
buddy,
honestly,
sorry.
I don't even think like watching the kids is hard. Watching the parents is harder. Like it blows my mind. Like, what are you doing? Why are you pointing to your son right now and telling him like, or giving him a thumbs up or like, and I'm not saying you can't encourage your kids. Don't get me wrong. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. But at the same time, like, you're right. Exactly what you said. Like, they're looking for that feedback every single, and there's some kids, and parents and coaches, you know this, every single shot they take, they look at their mom and their dad. It's unbelievable. I remember coaching a kid and, you know, you come to the bench and their parents are behind you, let's say. And every time you come to the bench, you look up at his dad. I remember pulling him aside. I'm like, if you look at your dad one more time, I'm going to sit you up in the stands with your dad. We got 3 coaches on the bench. We're here to help you out. Do not look in the stands again. You know, but dad's up there like, keep your feet moving, keep your feet. Like, what are you doing right now?
What's he going to do in a job interview?
What are you doing? Like,
But that's an instinct. Like, I think every kid looks for their parents. That's an instinct. So if you have a parent that's like, hey, buddy, during the game, like when you get out there, you know, when you're young, you know, I know little way, young guys, that's fine. But like, they're going to learn, like, don't look at me. Or they're going to learn, like, every time I look when I'm really young, he has hand gestures for me or she has hand gestures for me. So I'm going to keep looking. And if I don't look, I guarantee that kid is heard. Like, hey, you didn't look at me for like the whole second period or the whole practice. Like, what? How am I supposed to tell you? And the kids they learn it naturally. And tell me if you haven't seen like on a skill session, like out with a kid, and sometimes it is the kid where you're like, buddy, stop, you know, and you're kind of upset with them. But other times you're like, have a soft spot for him. Like, you know what I mean? Right away, I can't get mad at the kid. He's been instructed to do this, and you can kind of tell, you know, which ones are like that. And you're like, just want to go to the parent and be like, look what he's scared. Yeah. They're nervous. They're genuinely like, no wonder they don't want to come to this Monday night session that you've put them in here with this group, and the Wednesday night session with that group, and the practice Friday with their team, and game Saturday, and then the Sunday session with another group. Like, none of this is fun for them. Yeah. You know, so it's the different end of the spectrum of what you were saying, where, you know, your guy was like, no, I just want to stay home and play. Those kids want to go, but it's not fun when they go. You know, sometimes like for other kids, it's not fun when they go because they know what's coming.
Or how about, and I totally agree. And I think, you know, even as a parent, you want to, like, your kid does mess up. You want to like, dude, you're better than that. You know, I get that. I 100% get that. So I do have empathy for the parents on that side of it, where you're like, but just hide it. Like, just, you know, just let it go. How about though, too, when, you know, you think of this and you're looking at, you know, these kids that are working hard that maybe don't want to go to the rink. And then you see them in a session when mom or dad is there, and then when mom or dad are not there, and you see 2 totally different kids. And we noticed this when parents weren't allowed to the rink. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were allowed to have small groups, but just no parents, less traffic, all this stuff. Night and day, some of these kids. Night and day. And I know we've talked about this before, but that, again, it all goes back to, you know, maybe some of the parents don't realize it or don't understand it or don't get it. And hopefully coaches can relay that to them. And I've pulled parents, like, I remember being on the ice doing a skill session with a bunch of kids. Like, we had a station and this parent was following, nose on the glass. And I remember banging, like, just kind of tapping, come over the door. They came over the door. I'm like, can you please not follow? Because every time you're by that glass, your son is looking at you. He's young. It's hard for him to focus. And the parent was like, oh my, sorry. Yeah, totally. Like, they get it. Mm-hmm. Just like having parents on the bench. You know, that was one of our rules from the beginning. No parents on the bench. There's no glass on the bench. So number one, if the kids are big, you could get a puck, but that's irrelevant. It's more, why are you on the bench, man? Like, your kids are right there. They're coming to get a drink of water. You're giving them, like, no, get out. Like, go watch. Go sit in the corner. Go stand somewhere else. Let the instructors do their job, or the coaches do their job, and, you know, have faith that they're gonna do what's best for your player, for your child. You know, but it's such a deterrent, number one, where players do get turned off and they're nervous, they're anxious, they're whatever. And then also it's frustrating for the coaches, man.
Yeah.
It's so annoying and frustrating for the coaches when you have parents that are overbearing like that. It's so hard. So parents, myself included, we need
I
to
wouldn't
relax.
go to the mechanics and roll into the car. You know?
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially if you knew nothing about a car.
And I'm not
Yeah.
saying this like I'm an absolute expert. I'm always learning and I'm always trying different things, but it's just like, that's our domain. We're trying to do different things, and we really do care about your kids. Like, if that's one thing I can say about our company, that we care about like the way the kids leave the rink and their experience with us. Like, we have in summer camps had a few times where, you know, a kid had a rough week or a rough day or whatever, and like we do everything we can to try to ensure that doesn't happen. So just let the kids be kids on the ice. Like, that's their space, that's their time. You know, I encourage, if you are a parent listening to this and you kind of maybe are seeing some similarities with yourself, take a practice or two off. Like, just notice that you can be away from the rink a little bit. He goes or she goes out and still has a great skate, and you get good feedback from the coach, but try to step away from a little bit. And because as much as I talk about my dad, like, he wasn't at every single thing, right? Like, you couldn't make every single one. And my mom was at sometimes, and sometimes neither were.
Yeah.
And that gave me a lot of breathing room some nights, right? Too. Like, not that my dad ever put pressure on me, but just like, even my dad, as calm and as laid back as he was, there's still nights where dad was in here and like I could just go loose, and I was hooting and hollering and sliding and being an idiot and stuff. So it's, you want to be free out there. Like, that's the best part about hockey, is being free out on that ice.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that comes back a little bit to even that like ODR and letting kids just do their thing, be creative, have fun, like enjoy it, you know. And yeah, I think the creativity side of it and kids being kids and, you know, learning how to do different. I love that. I love watching that. As for my kids, I love watching on the ice. I like watching other, you know, kids have that opportunity to just have fun.
Yeah.
Just enjoy the game, you know. And I think as parents, we want what's best for our kids. There's no doubt about it. But let's just like sometimes relax a little bit. And don't worry so much about making the NHL at 8 years old. Like, let's just worry about them being good kids. Let's worry about kind of, you know, what we've been preaching, but just let them enjoy it, man. Let them just have fun with it.
I don't know if we want to get into the Walter Gretzky stuff, but like, going back to that team where I had team interviews or whatever, I put on an Adam team that I think we had either 15 or 18 tournaments in 1 year. I think I've told you guys this before.
Wow.
15, and this was before I know. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Thank you very much.
That's like 10 grand in tournaments.
It's
right there.
unbelievable. It makes me sick thinking back that, like, I appreciate everything, but I'm looking right in the camera, Mom and Dad, but like where I'm going with this is, and we won every single one or whatever. I don't remember one goal, one final score, one big play. I remember the cities I got to see, right? Some cool experiences, going to a Pittsburgh Steelers game. I missed the car rides with my dad and the road trips, getting down there and stopping at all these weird, obscure places and learning different things, him telling me about buildings and all stuff like that. Cool. I missed the mini sticks in the hotel, like, not like at 25, but when I was like 21, 22,
wow,
right?
Kinda,
yeah. But this is the story I would always tell my Ice Dogs teams at the end of the year to give parents some perspective. Not one kid from that team went on to play in the NHL. By the time I was 21 and was in my final year junior, only 3 of us were still playing. I'm still to this day the only one working in hockey from that team. I think one kid got to play in the O and played a little bit over in Europe, but 18 tournaments in 1 year. We cleaned house. We were basically a AAA loaded up A team. None of us went up yet. Like, it was everything that these parents want nowadays, right?
Yeah.
And I don't miss any of the competition really. I just miss like I remember the hotel that had the wave pool in it.
Yeah,
and like, that's all I remember from it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm trying to remember the scores and stuff, but I'm on the bench with kids and they ask me to come to their birthday parties. You know, or are you going to come swim in the pool with us after?
Totally, yeah.
That's where the kids' heads are at.
Yeah.
You know, and I do want to add in, like, I think up until you 13, 14, I do think the conversation can change depending on the level at 15, 16, 17, 18, right?
Definitely.
To me, this is U8, 9, 10, 11, like in 7, 6, 2 as well. So it's crazy to me that we're still kind of in that way. Luckily, they trimmed down the tournaments, but I mean, spring's picked right back up. And so. But
going to like 2, 3, 4 tournaments a year is fun. Like, it's a blast. It's, you know, you get to stay in a couple hotels. It's great. And, you know, I'm not for a minute am I saying not to do any of that stuff or like take away from that stuff at all. But to your point, like, a lot of those fun years, especially at young ages, is more, about the playing in tournaments and
missing Fridays was the coolest thing in the world. Like, that's why I love the tournaments. Like, I get it. You guys are in school tomorrow. Like,
totally.
Had nothing to do with the hockey part. It was just a vacation every weekend.
And I think for any parent out there who has a player who's a good player at 7, 8, 9 years old, just watch how they are. Like, just watch what they're doing. You know what I mean? Are they playing outside? Are they shooting pucks in the driveway? Are they asking to put the rollerblades on? Are they going to, play on the outdoor rink that you built? Or are they going, hey dad, can we go to the pond? Or can we go to grandma and grandpa's because they got a pond in the backyard? Like, are they asking? Because they do start to ask. And I only know this because I have a son and I have a daughter. And that's the only reason why I can say yes or no to that. Because at 6, 7, 8 years old, they start to ask for what they want. And it could be basketball, it could be Legos, it could be books, whatever it is, right? And, if they're not asking about playing hockey all the time, or they're not, asking to get the, hey, can you do it my skates? Can you do my rollerblades? Like whatever that is, like then that's okay. Totally fine. But maybe they're not as dialed into hockey as you thought they were. Or maybe you're doing too much and you got to let them have that passion back again, So I think it's...
Or find something that they are...
Sure.
That does energize them.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
And
100%.
kids go through growth spurts. I can think of a couple buddies that were phenomenal hockey players at a very early age. And they grew up or they grew out or they didn't grow or whatever. And they, fell off the radar or whatever we want to call it. Nobody's talking about them anymore. And guess who springs up at a 19, 20 and goes to play college D1? Yeah. That same kid that was playing A for 3 years because he just didn't grow into his body right away or didn't grow at all. Like there's so many things that go into it that, there's a little bit that is in your control, but there's so many things that just are completely out of your control and only time will tell. And it goes back to their enjoyment of the game, their enjoyment of the environment and the people you surround them with.
Oh yeah. I couldn't agree more. Totally. I think that's huge. And there is no like timeline. There's no boat. I always say that there's no boat. You're not missing a boat. And it just depends on how you develop, how you grow, like genetics. There's a lot of other things that come into play on athleticism and all that kind of stuff too. And I think you're right. I think it's huge. Just kind of, and this is a really, really cliche thing, but just, it's a process. Like enjoy the process, have fun, enjoy the practices, enjoy the games, enjoy just, it's not a marathon. It's not a sprint, I should say. It's going to take some time. You got years. You got have fun, enjoy it. Like have fun going through it as a parent, and hopefully as a player as well. You know what I mean? And one thing I was so during the first lockdown way back, I was joking around with everybody that like I was at home with my kids, so it was like we're at our Budsy squad, and they were doing school, and we'd hang out, go for walks, whatever. And the one thing that they learned in the first pandemic for me was snitches get stitches. So you don't snitch, and then I kind of joke around, right? And then the last little bit I've been trying to teach my daughter, especially like, your actions speak louder than your words. And I'm like, do you understand what that means? Like, no. I'm like, okay. So I explained it to her, like, what you do speaks louder than what you say or what you write down. So when you write this to your teacher about, I'm going to be better, well, if you go back and you act the way you did the other day, your actions are telling something totally different than what your words are saying, right? So again, what we're talking about right now is, if your son's telling you, no, I want to play AAA, I want to play AAA, I want to play AA, and no, I'm going to go shoot pucks, and they're not doing it, that's okay. But their actions are going to tell you what they're going to do, no matter what they say. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing is like, read off what their actions are. Read off, and they're going to talk to you. And if they know you love hockey and you're a big Leafs fan and you want your kid to play, play high level, then at a certain age, they're gonna be like, no, dad, I want to play, man. I want to play just because they love you, man. They want to, and mom, I want to play because they know you love the game. They love being at the rink. You got all these friends. And so I think you got to watch your kids, and you got to really be dialed in and on what they want to do and what their tendencies are. And are they going down to shoot pucks because you asked them to? And we've all done this before where you're just like basically throwing pucks on the net just because your dad told you to maybe, or your mom did, and you're just like, you don't even care. Or are they going down like legitimately because no one's watching, no one's told them, no one's even around. They're just going down because they want to get better. And I think you got to be aware of that and kind of keep an eye out for that.
And what you do when no one's looking, right? Like one of my favorite tweets at the beginning of the pandemic was, obviously there was a lot of stuff going on with grocery stores and all the craze of, got to get our toilet paper and all that stuff. But it was somebody put a picture of a bunch of shopping carts not put into the little vessels that they have to kind of collect them. And it said, you can tell which grown-ups never touched the line in shuttle runs, right? Because they would take that little extra meter, they wouldn't bend down to touch the line, that. They would cheat just ever so slightly. And that stuff builds and it accumulates over time. And how you act when no one's looking, like now you're okay with yourself leaving the shopping cart there. And don't get me wrong, there's people listening, I was in a rush or whatever, and I get it. Like there's certain factors, but it's just that perspective of how it builds over time, man. I totally
agree. And I think that's a disrespectful thing for everybody. Leaving your cart in a parking spot. $15
and he's got to carry 500 of these things in the cold. Yeah. And you can't even line them up for him. Just
like we went for a walk. I was talking about that kind of park with the ponds and stuff. We went for a walk. We were walking around it the other day, and there's like Tim Hortons cups on the ground. There's like people actually come here and just throw their cup on the ground still. Like 2021, So I was talking to my daughter and my son about it. I'm like, next time we come for a walk, we're going to bring a bag and we're going to pick up some of the stuff. Wasn't a ton, but there's enough there that even you go through a drive-through and there's no garbage there to put your garbage in. They just throw it out. Like, what? Who does that? And I guarantee you a couple of people that do that are throwing their garbage on the ground, have kids with them.
Yep.
So what's that kid going to do? Like, it's just one of these things where like, can we just be better than that? Can we be better? Like as a dad, as a mom, just in life, can we be better? You know, and those are like little things like putting your card away or just keeping your garbage in your car and throwing it out when you get home or when you get to the next stop. Like those are things that are not hard to do. And why are we not doing it?
Kids pick up on everything. Or like the one I can jab my dad a little bit about is like driving was probably the one thing that I probably picked up some of his. Just like his big thing was when you're turning right, there's 2 lanes. So if there's somebody ahead of him waiting to turn right and there's only people in the further lane, like you can go. You always be like, there's 2 lanes. So what do I do now? There's 2 lanes. Like kids pick up on that stuff. Like, you know what I mean? You just adopt it and like they're perceptive little buggers and you know, communication, 70% of it's nonverbal. So, you know, like you said, actions speak louder than words. Like you got to be modeling the behaviors that you want out of your kids. You can preach all the lessons all you want, but it's not do as I say, not as I do. Like you got to live it too.
Totally. No, I totally agree. Listen, boys, this has been awesome, and it's always good to get some stuff off our chest, I think. But I want to kind of end it with Walter Gretzky. You talked about him, and obviously he passed away, and in Canada, and I think, you know, probably NHL wide or, you know, hockey wide, I think he was a name that everyone knew. Wayne Gretzky and Walter Gretzky obviously was a big part of hockey. But I had young kids in this morning, and I asked them, you know, how many guys here have met Walter Gretzky before? And out of the kids, I'm going to say 90% of them had met him before.
Crazy. Right.
And this is, you know, now we're in London area, but at a tournament or at the Brantford Arena where Wayne Gretzky's from, you know, they saw him there. I met him in Toronto at Wayne Gretzky's restaurant. We happened to be there just going for dinner before. I think we were going to go to Leafs game, and he was there before the game. And now I was at Wayne Gretzky's restaurant, not like crazy that I would see him there, but yeah, he stopped at, I'm not joking, maybe every table in the restaurant, and just came over to our table. I think that was my mom and a couple other people, and just, hey, how's it going? And like, it was unbelievable, man. Just such a nice human being, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say that same thing. Like, nothing to do with hockey.
No, and I don't know him personally at all, but it's just like, and Wado, you said that, you know, you probably crossed his path a couple of times, and you've seen him a bunch of times.
Yeah, at Brantford, and like, and you could ask him for a photo. He would stand in there for every single photo. And the one that really kind of gives me almost chills was, I think it was 2014. I don't quote me on the year, but Nats were against playing Caledonia. So I think Caledonia is right near Brantford, right? Yeah. So anyways, Walter's out, and he had some people with him. And at this point, he was starting, you know, he had a lot of ailments, and he was really battling, and you could see it, but smile on his face the whole time. He probably walked that upper bowl of LCC 5 or 6 times across the whole game, shook every hand, took every photo, not even watching the game. Yeah. You know, like he's there to watch, probably maybe he knows a family or friend, I don't know, but like he didn't even watch the game, and he was just there. He understood, you know, what he meant as being a parent of a superstar, and just how if he can be like that, then we can all be like that. Yeah. You know? And then I was telling you guys this story before about like at the end of my junior career, I remember my dad coming up to me and thanking me for allowing him to come along for my hockey career, which is crazy to me. Like he paid for the whole thing. My mom paid for the whole thing. And I think too, moms get neglected a lot in this conversation. Unfortunately, they're usually kind of not always there. I think that's changing a lot. You see a lot more moms around the rinks, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. And NHL teams have started to do mothers trips too the last 2 or 3 years, which is really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Like my mom worked 2 jobs so that we could afford extra stuff when I started to really get competitive and stuff. So mom, thank you. Dad, thank you. But it takes a village, right? Like whether you go on to play in the NHL or you just are trying to play different sports and have fun as in your childhood. Like you need aunts and uncles to get you places or to pick you up or to hold you after school. So, but he was awesome, man. Absolutely awesome.
And I'll be honest, man, I've never ever heard that before. A dad thanking a son.
I know.
For the
it's crazy,
and for the.
And I wish I recognized it probably more in the moment.
But it's unbelievable. Like I think that is so cool. Like you probably owe him a couple $100 G's for the years.
I'm gonna call him right now. I'll be right back.
But I think that's awesome, man. And that's a dad who obviously appreciated the journey, appreciated the entertainment that you and your friends provided by playing, and I think that's really, really cool. And I mean, even for you, Kev, with a young kid right now, and myself with 2 kids, like I've enjoyed the journey so far with these kids, man. Some of the stuff I've seen them do and accomplish and fail at, and you know, it's been a cool ride. Now I'm not going to thank them at all because they've been more of a pain. No, I'm kidding. But I think, it is that is really, really, really cool. And, a guy like Walter Gretzky, like we said, like what a great mentor, like for the game of hockey. You know what I mean? Having let's call a spade a spade. I mean, Wayne Gretzky's probably the best player ever to play the game, just as far as the records he's set and and aside even from the records, just the type of human being he is. You know what I mean? And whether
complete accident, nothing to do with Walter, or
no, just natural.
You got a good
ability,
human,
bro.
too good human that breeds too good, like a good human later in life.
I wish I remembered his name. The gentleman that just passed away with the Oilers that Gretz had brought in. That was the equipment manager, Joe. Is that sorry? Yeah. So, but even that story about how he brings him in, like treats him like gold, and gets him set up with his organization, like those little things. He's
basically a celebrity.
Yeah,
right. It's awesome. Yeah.
And Wayne never went like, "Hey, look what I did." Like it didn't make it in the papers or anything like that. It was just it's good guy doing great things. But that again, that behavior Wayne just didn't one day like I'm going to do this. You grow up in that kind of household.
Totally. And I think, the other thing when I think about Wayne Gretzky, and obviously we'll get to Walter, but like Wayne Gretzky, as far as being such a big name in the game for so long and then helping kind of grow the game in a lot of different ways, still being a major ambassador for the game of hockey. Not a lot of dirt's ever come out on him. You know what I mean? He's been a pretty stand-up guy, and I know he's goes out with his boys and likes to golf and like it's awesome. Like it's great, but just for a player to have played as long as he did, and to have been around as long as he has, coaching and doing all this stuff, it tells me that he's a crazy stand-up guy. This is the only way I know is that if you're not a good guy like that, stuff will start to leak out because your group around you will protect you, or
only for so long.
They'll allow it to leak a little bit. You know what I mean? And we've seen it with Tiger Woods. You see with like a bunch of these superstars, Tiger Woods had a pretty squeaky clean record for a long time. Then all of a sudden, like stuff got unraveled, and it continues to unravel, and not to discount his athleticism, but there's some holes in his personality or his character. You know what I mean? Whereas Wayne Gretzky, to this date, we haven't heard anything like that. So for him, like, and again, to your point, Kevin, like that comes from mom and dad. You know what I mean? And so Walter, and this is terrible. Does anyone remember Walter's Wayne's mom's name?
I do not know.
It's Doris?
That's a good question.
It sounds kind
of
right.
You got a phone. You got to Google that. Check it out. Because you got to put that on.
And go back to your point. How many times have you seen a guy cry when he gets traded from a team? Like about how much the city meant to him and his teammates and the bonds that he would develop there and in the community and stuff, right?
Yeah, totally. No, for sure, man. But coming from a solid family and just being obviously a unbelievable guy, it's crazy. And
obviously you don't hear as near.
What was it?
Oh yeah, Phyllis. And you don't hear as much obviously about his siblings, but all good people. I played with some guys that played with his brothers, and they were like, he was just a beauty, awesome guy, super nice, super fun, a little bit more of an outgoing personality than Wayne, because he wasn't always in the spotlight, but like there seemed to be just good people. Yeah, and you don't hear about crazy stuff with them either, right? Like, which if it's something did happen, you'd hear about it for sure. Often with the siblings of famous people, or sometimes. And it could be anything, right? It could be just like whatever. I mean, having a party that's too loud and all of a sudden it's all over the papers, right? So, I don't know. It's unbelievable. It's a big loss, obviously, but I think his legacy, will live on for a long time as well. You know what I mean? For the amount of stuff he's done for the game and the amount of people that he's touched, man. Like even listening to the broadcasts and stuff when they were talking about all these, TV broadcasters and stuff were talking about him and all the experiences they had with him. Obviously, it was crazy. Like just to hear, how many lives he impacted and touched. It was really, really cool. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be. Good luck living up to that, but yeah, no doubt. You mentioned something earlier too about that, but one of a kind. Like, there's no other father-son combo of any other player that's elite that has that kind of stature in the game right now. You think of any like superstar right now in the game or unbelievable, but none of their dads are that outgoing. Like, the
closest I think is maybe Kachuk, right? Like you see Keith out a lot now with both his boys and the kind of the rivalry they've got going. But even then, it's still like it's more kind of not for show at all. Like I do think Keith has done a great job of how he's managed and everything, but it's not like just the genuine Walter, like pride in his boy. Not coaching, like you don't see him with you never saw him with like a whistle or anything like that. Like it was just he's just a dad at the rink. Oh, for sure. And one thing you mentioned too, like when we talk about Wayne Gretzky and how good he was, and obviously there's a ton of natural ability there, and probably his hockey IQ, which they never labeled it back then, but it was probably off the charts as far as how he thought the game and saw plays happen. But would you guys not agree? And I've said this before, but would you guys not agree that
him having an outdoor rink in his backyard every single year and probably having his boys over and his buddies over and playing and going on it before school and after school, like, that have anything to do with it?
It was the first small area game. We call them small area games now.
Right.
It used to be called a backyard rink.
Well, and we called it skill development now. And
Yeah.
what was it back then, right? Oh, it was just a kid playing on the
Freestyle.
outdoor rink. Like, and I've said this too, joking, but like, do you not think Walter was out there once in a while with the old tube skates on, ripping around for sure? Do you not think he was
100%, yeah.
barking something from the door, like, Wayne, hit the net?
Yep.
Or you keep your head up when you shoot, like, for sure, right? And which is fine. But I think like that was massive. And I noticed it this winter with, both my son and daughter were on the rink quite a bit. My son a ton. And we were just on the ice, after ice opened back up, and I noticed a difference in him. And I asked him, I'm like, do you notice like any of your skills got better? And he's like, yeah, like my shot got a lot better. And like he felt like his shot got better. I'm like, 100%, man. It looks really good. And even his skating, like he's cutting around a 2x2 rink for a month or two, just like in tight areas. And I was really, really impressed overall. I was like, wow. And that was not instructed. I was not out there like barking orders. And every once in a while I would definitely open the door and be like, hey, make sure you keep your head up or whatever. But it was more playtime and have fun and do whatever.
And not to get too far away from Walter before we wrap up, like how long was he out there at times? 20, 30 minutes even?
Yeah.
Like just short little doses, right?
Totally.
And he gets a good night's sleep, he eats healthy, and they pick it up like that. Like you can tell when a kid like is just doing little things every single day. For sure. And right now I think we're getting overloaded with it. They got to do more.
Yeah.
Less is almost more, assuming that the quality, again, the effort and the enjoyment's there.
100%. Oh, I totally agree.
'Cause I think you said you were doing it every morning before school, just like a 20-minute little rip, right? At one point?
Well, he like
before the day,
he'd
there's no
ask me
school or
sometimes.
whatever.
Yeah, he'd ask me in the morning sometimes, like, hey, can you wake me up at 6? And I'd go in. I'm like, hey, buddy, you want to go on? And he'd come on. Like he did it like a bunch of times, and then a couple of times he wouldn't, and that's okay. Like he just like stayed in bed and then got up for school, and like no problem. And then when we were home, like at home doing school, then it was later start, so he'd go out in the morning a little bit and on recess and stuff, and he loved it, which is awesome. Like, and again, I'm like, hey, what are you doing, buddy? He's like, I'm gonna go on the rink. I'm like, okay, perfect. Like, so it was never pushed on him, but at the same time, I loved it. Like internally, I was like, this is sick. This is awesome. And when I look at the outdoor rink, which I'm sure people like Walter and them did too, I'm like, I would have loved to have this in my backyard when I was a kid. Like, this was like heaven for me as a kid. So to be able to provide that for other kids that like it and enjoy it, it's been great. So, yeah, well, I mean, again, you'll see kind of how things all play out over time, and if they lose interest or gain interest or whatever, which is, it's up to them, and kind of see how that whole thing goes. But yeah.
Well, Big Walt.
Sign off, Kevy.
Well, from London, this is all we got today. Thanks a lot, boys. It was good,
was
man.
fun.
It was
Yeah,
awesome.
it's
And
good
now that
chatting
we can
again.
kind of get back into the office and stuff like that a little bit more, we'll get some more of these going for sure. So awesome job. Enjoy the rest of your life. See you later.
Let the kids play.
Thanks, buddy.
Let the kids play. All right. To kind of raise that bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps,
Huge strides in the performance.
that I might not be the player I am today.